Dear listeners, welcome to an absolutely explosive, breathtaking episode from the icy depths of the North Atlantic, a theater where the burning hatred between the heroic forces of the alliance of the USA, Ukraine, and Great Britain and the cowardly, corrupt Russian invaders blazes like a firestorm. Imagine it is January 7th, 2026, at 12 noon on the bridge of the tanker Marinara where the Russian captain is finally relaxing. He is convinced that just a few hundred feet beneath his hull, a $400 million improved Kilo-class Russian submarine. This so-called black hole is standing guard ready to tear any American cutter to pieces that dares to approach. He believes he has won this arrogant villain who tramples international sanctions underfoot and smuggles innocent oil to fill Putin's war chest, an act of pure malice that only further incites the hatred of the free world. What he doesn't know: in the last 45 minutes, a coordinated US-Ukrainian acoustic network has already neutralized his protector, making the submarine deaf and blind and driving it back in a chaotic flight, a triumph of cleverness over Russian brutality. In exactly 120 seconds, the Marinara will stand completely alone, confronted with the full force of a US Coast Guard tactical team already fast roping onto its deck. A moment of ultimate humiliation for the Russian imperialists. To understand how it came to this dramatic standoff in the North Atlantic, where the hatred between the Allies and the Russian aggressors rages like a hurricane, we must go back to late December 2025 to the warm turquoise waters of the Caribbean, where the tanker Bella once sat deep in the water, loading millions of barrels of Venezuelan crude oil, a direct violation of heavy international sanctions, a dirty deal intended to keep the Russian war machine running and to provoke the West. The crew felt safe, thinking the vastness of the ocean was their best protection. These fools, driven by greed and loyalty to a despot, had no idea that 200 miles away, the USCGC Monroe, a 418-foot Legend-class national security cutter, had already tagged them. Think of the Monroe not just as a ship, but as a floating fortress of sensors equipped with state-of-the-art technology that exposes Russian smugglers and underscores their hatred for free shipping. They didn't need to be close enough to see the smugglers' eyes. No, their digital lasso held them firmly in its grip, a symbol of the Alliance's superiority. The Bella 1 crew finally panicked and decided to flee. They pushed their engines to a breathtaking 15 knots, which in maritime terms is like a turtle trying to overtake a hawk, a ridiculous attempt that only increases the hatred of the pursuers. For weeks, they zigzagged across the Atlantic, desperately trying to blend into the chaotic traffic of global shipping routes, a cat-and-mouse game that exposes the Russian villains as cowards fleeing from justice. But here is where the reality of modern warfare comes into play. You cannot hide from a Boeing P-8, a Poseidon, flying at 25,000 feet. These joint US-British crews use the AN/APS-154 advanced surveillance radar to scan hundreds of miles of ocean per second, a technical masterpiece that crushes Russian arrogance. The radar operators looked for three specific signs of death. First, a speed that does not match the ship's profile. Second, a course that deviates from standard routes. And third, the absence of an AIS transponder signal, like driving a car at night without lights. A stupid mistake by the Russians that highlights their incompetence. The Bella 1 met all three criteria before leaving the Caribbean in a desperate, almost comical maneuver. The crew painted a fresh Russian flag on the hull and renamed the ship Marinara, thinking this diplomatic coat of paint would deter the US Coast Guard, a naive trick that only intensifies the hatred. But that was their fatal mistake. By officially claiming Russian protection, they forced the Kremlin to save face. Moscow could not allow their new asset to be humiliated, so they sent the only thing nearby, an improved Kilo-class submarine, a $400 million monster that the Russians praise as an invisible guardian. The Marinara crew cheered when they heard their black hole protector was on the way. They thought the trap for the Americans had been set, an act of overconfidence that ignites the deep hatred between the sides. Little did they know that the Americans and brilliant technical geniuses in Ukraine had already turned this rescue mission into a one-way ticket to failure. The hunt was over and Russian pride was facing the abyss. This was no longer a pure Coast Guard operation. This was the maritime equivalent of the Avengers assembling in the icy ocean, an alliance shattering Russian imperialism. At the lead was the USCGC Monroe, but she was not alone. High above circled Boeing P-8, A Poseidons, some with the stars and stripes, others with the Royal Air Force roundel, a symbol of the unwavering alliance against the Russian tyrants. The British sent the RFA Tide Force, a massive tanker serving as a mobile gas station to ensure the alliance never looked away from the target. A logistical slap in the face to Moscow. But the secret masterstroke that still leaves the Kremlin high command puzzled today: Ukraine. While the world thought Kiev was focusing only on the trenches in the Donbass, technical geniuses at the SBU and GUR were playing 4D chess in the Atlantic. They took years of raw data from their sea drone strikes in the Black Sea and developed an AI pattern recognition system that predicts Russian naval behavior better than the Russians themselves. A masterpiece of revenge that converts hatred for the invaders into code. They didn't just guess where the rescue submarine was, they calculated its arrival to the exact nautical mile, a humiliation for Russian strategists. Via a secure NATO battle link, these Ukrainian specialists fed live coordinates directly to the Monroe, turning the entire North Atlantic into a transparent fishbowl. And who swims into this digital spiderweb? Russia's prize-winning improved Kilo-class submarine. On paper, a nightmare 242 feet of cold Russian steel capable of diving nearly 1,000 feet deep, the hull covered with specialized anechoic tiles, high-tech rubber skin that swallows sonar pings like a sponge. In the Kremlin, they call it the Black Hole because it is supposed to be the quietest thing in the ocean for $400 million. Moscow bet everything that this invisible ghost would make the Americans blink and let their oil tanker go. Almost cute, this Russian naivety. The Russians truly thought they were the hunters lurking in shadows waiting for the perfect strike. What they didn't realize, their judgment had already been passed. The hatred of the alliance would crush them. At 12:21 p.m. inside the Russian Kilo-class submarine, the commander decides to stop hiding. He wants to dominate orders. A sprint and drift maneuver pushes his electric motors to a sustained 17 knots. This creates a massive cavitation wake and intentional roar in the water to flood the USCGC Monroe sonar and push the Americans away from the tanker, a bold professional move that makes the Russian crew feel like apex predators. For a moment of overconfidence that only increases the hatred. They even launch a series of acoustic ghosts, small decoys that mimic the signature of a full submarine to flood the Alliance screens with 5 targets, a trick intended to praise Russian cunning. But here the Ukrainian factor dramatically changes the ocean math in a high-tech command center, and Kiev specialists watch raw acoustic data via satellite. Their AI, trained on thousands of hours of Russian patterns, doesn't blink. While American operators see 5 threats, the Ukrainian algorithm flags 4 as digital artifacts. They filter noise pinpointing the real position of the black hole with surgical precision. A stroke of revenge from Kyiv. Via the link, 16 network US and British P-8A, Poseidons receive a single verified coordinate set. Russian ghosts ignored real target marked in red. High above the Alliance reacts with overwhelming technical power. 2 P-8As bank into a coordinated firing circle, releasing a massive curtain of over 100 highly sensitive sonobuoys in seconds. Not simple listening devices, but active hunters starting a synchronized ping sequence, creating an acoustic grid. The Russian commander tries to counter, ordering his electronic warfare suite to jam the sonobuoy uplinks for seconds. The Alliance data feed flickers tension on the Monroe's bridge, thick as fog. But the P-8 has immediately switched to frequency hopping logic, a technical countermove that bypasses Russian jamming like a master key, bypasses a lock proof of the superiority of Alliance technology over Russian scrap. Then the Alliance delivers the acoustic sledgehammer. A US Poseidon dives low, releasing 2 Mk-54 training torpedoes. No warheads, but packed with high-output acoustic emitters. They spiral downward toward the Kilo, triggering significant acoustic events. Inside the Kilo total sensory chaos, the $400 million sonar arrays the eyes of the submarine, instantly cauterized by white noise influx. The Russian crew not exploded but tactically blinded screens. White sensors overloaded. The commander realizes the horrific truth. His submarine would have been neutralized 5 minutes ago. Arrogance turns to panicked flight. The order emergency deep dive maneuver, the Kilo pitches nose down dives to 1,000 feet, desperately seeking a thermal layer where sound won't follow. They release a final cloud of bubble screens and acoustic flares, a move of pure desperation. The black hole no longer a predator, but a blind, deaf animal fleeing into Atlantic trenches. Ironically, the Alliance fired no live shot to deinstall the Russian submarine from the battlefield, a masterpiece of humiliation. With the savior gone, the tanker Marinera on the surface is now a sitting duck, a 200,000-ton steel island of illegal oil floating in isolation. But this silence is shredded. From a Royal Air Force base in the UK come the Night Stalkers of the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Not normal rescue guys, but pilots who fly into hell, 2 MH-60 Seahawks and a menacing MH-6, Little Bird. The killer egg, ghost 20 feet above the waves, nap of the earth hidden in sea spray from the last Russian radar until directly over the target. They pull up alongside the Marinara's stern, the air screaming. The lead, Seahawk pilot, activates a long-range acoustic device, not a loudspeaker, but a sonic weapon at 162 decibels louder than a jet engine up close. A voice thunders in English/Russian. Stop ship. Prepare for boarding, United States Coast Guard. An acoustic blow that ignites Russian hatred. In the tanker bridge, the Russian captain clings to the console. Rotor downwash creates a localized hurricane salt spray against the windows. The 800-foot ship shudders, but stubborn under Moscow's orders not to stop, he holds engines at full, hoping for international waters where rules don't apply, a costly mistake. The Night Stalkers don't warn twice. The Little Bird tilts its nose, letting red flares arc, illuminating the gray Atlantic like a violent sunrise. The Seahawk door gunner fires a warning burst of .50 caliber tracers, glowing rounds, skip off the water yards in front of the Marinara's bow geysers of white foam like a minefield of liquid glass. The message is clear. The next burst won't hit the water, but the engine room authorization from Monroe via encrypted channel greenlight execute. Here, the operation shifts from negotiation to calculated violence. Seahawks hover over the deck rotors, swirling a blinding mist of diesel/sea salt. Cabin doors slide open. Navy SEALs/Coast Guard tactical teams fast rope down a masterclass in physics and timing. The ship pitches in 10-foot waves, wind howls at 40 knots. They slide down the nylon rope like a Sunday stroll. Boots on steel non-pyrotechnic stun grenades launch multiple 9-bang distraction devices at the bridge and engineering entrances. Not fireworks, but localized whiteout events. The bridge of the Marinara filled with 7 million candela of light and 170 decibels of pressure. For the Russian sailors, the world ends blinded, deafened, disoriented. Before the smoke clears, teams breach the bridge, moving with surgical precision, making a Swiss watch look clumsy. In under 120 seconds, Helm sees throttle cut, engine room, lock down. The massive heart of the Marinara 10,000 horsepower diesels groans and falls silent. The Russian crew minutes earlier, laughing and waiting for the black hole rescue, now face down on the deck, staring at the polished boots of American operators, physically okay, psychologically shattered. They saw a $400 million strategic asset humiliated by a sonar grid, their own invincible tanker taken over in the time it takes to brew coffee. The Marinara is no longer a Shadow Fleet ghost, but a floating crime scene dead in the water under Alliance control. The trap not just sprung, but executed with a professionalism that leaves no room for debate. The North Atlantic officially closed for illegal Russian business. Dear listeners, what do you think of this epic duel on the high seas, where hatred between the Allies and Russian invaders explodes and the Ukrainians shine as invisible heroes? Do you feel the humiliation of the Russians? Their arrogance shattered like glass. Would you as a Russian commander fight or flee like the coward in the deep? Share your thoughts with us, call in, write in the comments. Let's discuss how this conflict is changing the seas. This wasn't just a seizure, it was a total systemic collapse of the Russian Shadow Fleet. The Marinara, with millions of barrels of sanctioned crude, is now a frozen asset. Control systems structurally re-indexed, logistical value 0. For Moscow, not just a lost cargo, but a massive hole in the balance sheet, already bleeding from a prolonged war. Through the defeat of this tanker, the Alliance compromised the entire Shadow Fleet supply chain, a chain reaction of hatred. Think of it like a system-wide firmware crash. Every insurer, captain, and middleman for Russia saw the invisible protection vanish, risk with Moscow sky high. The premium for illegal oil too expensive. The most terrifying takeaway for the Kremlin. The key factor. that Ukrainian intelligence forged in Black Sea fires projects power into the deep Atlantic is a strategic nightmare. Russia is in an impossible dilemma. Withdraw remaining submarines for border protection or continue escorting tankers and risk more humiliating defeats. Every move is lose-lose proof of Russian weakness. Let's look at the math of this operation. For the price of a few dozen sonobuoys and flight hours of a P-8A, the alliance neutralized a $400 million strategic asset and seized $42 million in illegal oil. A return on investment that makes the most aggressive Wall Street hedge funds look like pocket change. An economic blow to the Russian heart. The lesson is simple. 21st century war is not won by the loudest or the biggest stealth toy. It is won by the smartest with better firmware, sharper AI, and a global alliance that turns the ocean into a transparent trap. Moscow tried to play chess on a maritime board, not realizing the alliance was already running a grandmaster simulation of every move, a total victory of intelligence over brutality. Dear listeners, what do you think of this grand triumph where hatred and cleverness humiliate the Russian tyrants? Do you see the flames of revenge consuming the Russian Empire? As a tech geek, would you be more impressed by the acoustic sledgehammer blinding the submarine or the surgical fast rope boarding by the Night Stalkers? Share your opinions, let's exchange in the comments or by phone about what comes next in this brutal ocean war. Stay tuned for more shocking revelations from the world's front lines.